to us. It's there, you use it, you don't know where it is, you don't know where it came from, you don't know how much it costs, you know how much you pay, but you pay a small fraction of what it would take to actually build and deploy a network like this of your own. So I like that analogy. It's the first time I've used it. I think it works, and I hope you get the point. So breaking it down a little bit more, there are 3 layers of the cloud: infrastructure, platform, and software. And you can add as a service to the end of each of those. So infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. Infrastructure is really the bottom layer, the foundational layer, the layer that I just showed on the screen before. And this is comprised of connectivity, storage, computing power, so hardware, okay? Service providers make the investment in infrastructure, they put it in data centers, and they make it available to customers in a utility model or as a service. The benefits of this are quite clear, quite simple. It's cost efficient, scalable. You pay for it as you use it. So in other words, you don't need a whole lot of CapEx. You don't have to go and buy a building. You don't have to buy servers. It's all done, and you pay for it as you go. Some examples: Rackspace, VMware, and of course, C&W Business, shameless plug there. But we are an infrastructure as a service provider. That's what we do. That's our bread and butter. Platform as a service, similar concept. Everything's all done, just one layer above to the operating system. Many infrastructure as a service providers also deliver platform as a service and allows you to do a number of different things. The benefits are no maintenance, managed via web, scalable, okay? So really you're getting now the ability to do some fancy things on this platform to enable your business to move forward. Examples: Google App Engine, Windows, Azure, AWS. These are providers that give customers platforms to build applications, to run programs that allow them to move their business forward. Software as a service, content streaming, collaboration. So this, again, another layer up. Infrastructure at the bottom, platform, software or apps on top of that. Benefits there, always available everywhere on any device. Think about Netflix, think about Salesforce.com, think about, I mean, there's so many, right? So that, ladies and gentlemen, gives you a view. So let no one blind you with acronyms anymore. Infrastructure, platform, software, delivered as a service in a utility model. So now that we've completely demystified the cloud, I would like to give you a view on how we can embrace it, how we can use it. And we have some homegrown examples of how we've taken companies from technology that they use in their premise. And a lot of us technology folks like to see those flashing lights in our data centers. They like to hug all the hardware. But we have worked with some actually very forward-thinking regional institutions that understood the power of scalability and technology. In comes the Caribbean Stock Exchange project. And we worked quite closely with them for quite a number of years in thinking through how they could go from separate infrastructures in each island that were inefficient, that required upgrading, looking at their core application that they needed that to deliver services to their customers, their brokers. They wanted to upgrade it. They realized that if they tried to solve this problem as 3 separate entities, they would not enjoy any scale. Sound familiar? And so they were forward-thinking enough to say, actually, We need a cloud solution. So here we have an entity, 3 separate islands, literally running as 3 separate companies with 3 separate infrastructures looking to simplify and scale. They went through quite elaborate and detailed requirements sort of gathering exercise. Again, we work quite closely with them. On the screen here, another great shot of our network. We're very proud of that. The black icons are the countries where the stock exchange is actually operate. The red icons are where our data centers are. And so we created a solution for them, literally where they have one shared platform for all 3 data centers. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a mystical cloud somewhere that we don't know. This is here in our region. This is technology and infrastructure and people and processes that are here in our region. This is our cloud. So what were some of the benefits of this? And I know, I think we've probably heard, cost reduction a million times over the last couple of days. But really it's about operating costs, okay, and total cost of ownership. When we own our own infrastructures, there are a lot of costs that are involved in owning those infrastructures that in many instances our institutions don't actually know, don't actually have a clear handle on. And so we worked quite closely with them to make sure that we understood what that cost structure was or was currently at the time and what it ended up being. The other big benefit for the stock exchange was they didn't have to find a wad of cash to give to somebody for the procurement of boxes. They didn't need a whole bunch of capex. And so it made access to the technology that much more easy, much more simple. Scale. We talk about scale. Again, what does that really mean? So we have infrastructures now where if the stock exchange wants to acquire a new application, or they want new processing power, or they want more bandwidth, and it goes on and on and on, they talk to us, we turn it up for them, and they pay for it. And it's as simple as that. Hitherto now, they would have to go through the process all over again. They'd have to scope it, they'd have to spec it, and they'd have to procure it. With technology procurement in the old school, you never get it right because you either overspend, you buy a box that's way too big, you buy infrastructure that's way too expensive, and you don't use it, but you spent the money. Or you buy something that's too small because you're not quite sure how your business or your government is going to evolve over time. How do you get that right? How do you make sure that you are right-sized for the future? This solves that problem. Bandwidth. Lucky for us, we have a network that provides bandwidth, but bandwidth, none of this cloud stuff happens without bandwidth. You need it, and you need lots of it. And you need it to be redundant and resilient. And with the solution that we provided, that just happened off the bat. Built-in DR. Disaster recovery, again, is one of those things. It's like insurance, right? How do you know, you buy it because you think you're going to have an accident. That's terrible. But the truth is, you need it. And particularly in our region, where we suffer from acts of God, etc., you need a solution that has redundancy, disaster recovery built in. And so the stock exchange benefits from disaster recovery off the bat, simply because they're leveraging infrastructure that has redundancy and resilience built in. So, how do we do this? What are the lessons? How did we get from where we were to where we are now? I think the first point is, if you're thinking about some sort of cloud, some sort of service, it's important that you take the time to be very clear on your requirements and options. I think many times our customers sort of say, yeah, we like the sound of that, let's do it, without really taking the time to understand what their business requirements are. Again, many times these projects are led by the technical folks, and it becomes about technology. That is absolutely the wrong way to look at this type of project. You have to be very clear about what your business requirements are. And in this particular example, it was about scale. The different businesses didn't have the resources to procure this by themselves, so they came together for it. So be very clear about that, understand your requirements and your options. Don't be afraid to consult, talk to providers who do this. Talk to all of them, understand what all of your options are, to make sure that you're clear on what you're getting yourself into. The business case. Business cases are what run businesses and should run governments. I'm going to go out on a leg and say that. But make sure that your business case is solid. Make sure you understand the numbers up front. How much am I going to save? How much is this going to cost? What's my total cost of ownership? How much are the different bits and pieces? If I want to do something in 3 years' time, what does that look like? What about resources? What about people? So be very clear about your business case, run the numbers, make sure that the numbers make sense. Procurement. A lot of you in the room are government-based. Procurement is a big deal. Our procurement cycles need to be very robust, very clear. We need to make sure that, again, our requirements are very clearly documented and defined. Do not rush your procurement. Make sure the due diligence is done. Kick the tires. Send people in to the would-be service providers. Understand, lift the bonnet, look at the bits and pieces. Look at the people. Who are the people that are going to be supporting this? Today we have a bunker where we're showing our customer service center. We've got the screens there that show, and Madam Prime Minister, you were there, where you can see all of the tools that are required to run something like this. If your service providers don't have those things, then you need to put a question mark next to that, okay? So take the time, be very clear about your procurement process up front, and follow that procurement process very closely and carefully. Implementation. Again, we spend a lot of time on procurement, we spend a lot of time thinking about what we want. We don't necessarily take the time to think through what an implementation to the cloud will look like. We went through a very detailed implementation process on this particular project. It took a while. There were hiccups. But as a customer, you really need to then treat your chosen service provider like a true partner. Sit with them in the room, get their guys, sit down in the room, plan it out, work together. As the project evolves, things will change, requirements will change, scope will change, and that teamwork, that collaboration between you, the customer, and your selected provider is what will make the difference in a successful implementation of a cloud solution. I mentioned treat partners, suppliers like true partners. So ladies and gentlemen, in closing, this is not smoke and mirrors. The cloud is real. At Cable and Wireless, we are very proud of our legacy and history in the Caribbean. But we're also very proud of the fact that we have built an infrastructure that will allow us to make sure that our businesses, our governments, our people, our citizens are future ready. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jensen. So we got the full spectrum there. We got the infrastructure. We heard a lot about the cloud infrastructure. We actually saw the lay of the land, the actual concept of a Caribbean cloud, in example, demonstrated very clearly there. And we actually saw partnerships, the whole issue of implementation, which is a big part of the whole issue of cloud adoption. How do you move forward? What decisions do you take? How do you take those decisions? And partnerships clearly came out there. It's not a matter of just implementing technologies, but you have to establish partnerships along the way. And we have to work together. So it's a very collaborative process indeed between the private sector and the public sector. At this point, we would like to ask the panelists to kind of gather here. So I'd like to ask Mr. Ayala to come, please. And Mr. Sylvester, please return to the stage. And the B-Mobile contingent, we have 2 persons, I believe. We have Mr. Ralph Young, and we have Mr. Cox as well. Great. So, okay, gentlemen, you can have your seat. Thank you. Okay, I'd just like to start off by, I know we had a number of presentations and persons really didn't get the opportunity to share questions. So we start by fielding questions from the audience. Do you have any questions, first off? Any questions that relate to any one of the presentations, anything that you saw that struck you and you would want to comment on or get clarity on? So, okay, we have one question. Yeah, good. And anybody else, please you can come forward to the mics.
Deirdre Williams, St. Lucia, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your presentations. Can you hear okay? All right, actually I have 2 questions. The first one I am quite sure you are not going to answer because I've been asking it for about 10 years and no one has answered it. But you tell us, all of you I think, tell us, this is a big project, costs a lot to do it. What we're offering you is a chance to rent the little piece of it that you need to use. So my first question is always, what would it cost to build it? But I'm not expecting you to answer that one. You should, though, one day. The real question, you're talking about, particularly I think Mr. Ayala spoke about you renting what you need for as long as you need it for. And it occurred to me, that sounds great, but when is it really the time to discard information? There are government regulations about that. Some stuff you must keep for 30 years or longer. It may be closed for a long time. So you're going to have to pay rent for a long time. And I wondered what your feedback was on that particular consideration. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for the question. So we have different, specifically for data, we have different storage classes. So whenever you start using our cloud, then you start in a hot area for storage, and then we start lowering that hotness into a very cold storage. So just to give you a hint, about $1 a terabyte, that will be our lowest price for storage. So yes, all those archiving for 30 years or even more, even without a final date, yes, it will start growing, but its growth will be fairly smaller than even having regular infrastructure. So if you compare the regular infrastructure, then you will have your infrastructure and then somebody to maintain that infrastructure, and then electricity, space and stuff. In our cloud, the cost will be dramatically reduced even over time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think just did your question spoke about a retention policy to some extent in terms of
Yes.
data. Yeah.
So specifically for storage, we do have our service is called Simple Storage Service, is S3. You can do storage policies when you can downgrade the speed of getting that information automatically. So for example, for highly regulated governments, we have like you're in the hot zone for a year, and then exactly after a year, you downgrade it to, I don't know, medium cold and super cold, and that's completely automated. That is also secured. For example, in our platform, we have artificial intelligence that can overlook that information. And if there is any sensitive data, our platform builds security on top of those data or that data, those PDFs or whatever documents you have there, and it places some more secure.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And you have something to, Ralph, you have a comment?
Impossible question.
Pardon?
The impossible question. You can answer.
Oh, maybe go ahead. Go ahead.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So let me try the impossible question. So let's say a small island, 250,000 people. We take in about 3 to 5 million US to build a data center. Of course, a data center has different tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So we're looking more like a tier 3 type data center, fully certified type of environment. And I hope that helps you going forward. Thanks.
So that's the answer to the impossible question, right? Sure.
And just to get into that impossible question as well, specifically for cloud vendors and the true cloud computing that I emphasized earlier, is we own the assets. So it shouldn't cost to any government those assets. So you will entirely rent those infrastructure, and the cost directly for those assets for the government should be completely zero, if that makes sense to you.
Okay, and I have a question spinning off of this discussion here. And my question is, I mean, in most cases, the adoption of cloud technology, and particularly by governments, we would agree that the pace is not as it should be expected. It's fairly slow. All right, transitioning to the cloud in a lot of cases, and there are some issues and some prohibiting factors that would arise as causing governments not to adopt cloud technology as quickly as they should and in the manner in which they should to get the most ROI on their investment and the most efficiency matrix coming out of it. So I would just like to pose a general question. I don't know who would decide to answer. What are the key prohibitive factors or the gaps that you would identify? I know some would have been mentioned in your presentation, Sylvester, but some specific areas and how do we overcome these challenges and these issues? In other words, partnering with the private sector as well as governments, what are the major issues you see, hurdles to overcome, and how would you suggest specific strategies, at least one or two strategies that can be adopted?
Hello? Working? Hello? Can you hear me? Okay, so prohibitive factors. I think the elephant in the room is with respect to government around this question of data sovereignty. When we talk to our governments in the region, there's this perception that governments can't talk to cloud providers because the data needs to be, sovereign, somehow sovereign. And there's this perception also of security, if it goes into the cloud, then is it less or more secure? I think we have to work collaboratively with the governments. I do understand that we have to be careful, obviously, with our data, right? I understand that. But I hope that you saw from my presentation that a lot of this isn't sort of mystical, right? These are data centers in our region. These are networks that we provide in our region. And in many instances, the fear around sovereignty is more about perception than it is either specific legislation or specific rules around data. There tends to be a very limited set of data that is required to absolutely be sovereign in country. And so I think that's one big one for us to work with governments to help them and ourselves understand is the data sovereignty issue. So that's the first one. I think the second one is around the numbers, the procurement, the costs. Again, a lot of the procurement cycles for government tend to be CapEx driven. So they're given a grant or a fund, or there's a set finite amount of money that the government has to deliver a project of this nature. And the question therefore becomes sustainability. How, after we do this, when the money's finished, what's going to happen? And I think, again, that's really where public-private partnerships make sense. How do we, as providers, make sure that we can work with our government? So, for me, it's those two things. One, data sovereignty. I think that's more a myth. I might say than specific legislation that says there's no way that your data can leave the island. That's one. Two, the procurement. How do we make sure we work with governments to make sure that these services are sustainable, not just for 3 years, but for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years?
Very good. Excellent. Thanks. Anybody else who wants to?
Yeah, sure. If I can jump in. So I love this phrase that says that culture is a strategy for breakfast. And whenever, just piggybacking into the comment, there is this sense that cloud cannot be used by the government, and either it is sometimes statutory or legislatory or regulatory. There are different phases of whether I'm able to use cloud or not. And yesterday I showed a very simple diagram on how to do this broad adoption on cloud, and he started all with policy and regulations and actually definition of what exactly would be cloud for any specific country. This is already done in a lot of countries, the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, Singapore. All these countries have already a definition of what is cloud, what are those policies of using cloud computing, even doing a tiering on the information, highly regulated information, midly regulated information, open data and stuff. And then it comes again security and standards for using technology, and on top of that, acquisition methodology. How will we acquire the cloud? And then skills, because cloud is slightly different than regular technology. So we need to build skills in order to unblock the cloud, and then we will have massive adoption for cloud.
So I want to support two colleagues, and Sylvester, I agree with you wholeheartedly. There are many challenges at the government level when it comes to the sovereignty of data. And, but from where we sit, one word to me embodies what we need to do to overcome this, and it's called education. Every day, the customer or the person within each territory would go onto Amazon, buy products, would go onto the Google, into a cloud, would go onto your iPhone, into the cloud. But yet still, we are trying to box in our countries within this geographic boundaries when the citizens are enjoying a worldwide global trust into the cloud. So it comes back to how we see ourselves and how we see the benefits of what we do, how we share the information, how do we partner, how do we educate ourselves at the school and straight up the chain to ensure that everyone understands the benefit of the cloud, but also the drawbacks, security concerns. So it's full disclosure, eyes are open. How do we, within the CARICOM region, share the benefits that some of us have enjoyed with the cloud, and of course carry ourselves into that next level to ensure that citizens themselves are the ultimate benefits of what many different providers have to offer. And from where we sit, simple things, for example, internal to us, we have had vendor forums where we invited all our vendors to come in and understand what we are doing with the cloud, what we are doing with procurement, what we are doing, and just by educating them, they understand the benefits for them. And in turn, there's more buy-in to share and go forward with technology as at a scale. So I would say education comes down to education, how we educate ourselves on the benefits and the drawbacks, and then make an informed decision to go forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think the consistent thread here is the whole issue of partnerships, collaboration, sharing, and communicating effectively with both the private sector and the public sector. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. All right, so we're behind time, but we're trying to catch up. I don't know if we would before the end of the evening. At this point, we would like to invite Mr. Paul Acton of Digicel Group and Mr. Michael Barrow, Group Services Delivery Manager, Caribbean and Central America, Digicel Business, to present us a case study in digital transformation in Dominica.
Thank you, Junior. Good afternoon, everybody. It's coming to the end of what I see as having been a very successful few days here. Congratulations, Secretary General. It's our, again, delight to be involved in working with CTU over the last number of years. And as we see, I suppose, the evolution and development of what we see today around this focus on digital transformation, what it means. So this afternoon, given that I think we're the last presentation before everybody sort of gets to wrap up, we were asked if we could extend our presentation out to an hour, but we kept it to 20 minutes. You'll be glad to hear. So really what I want to do is share with you, I suppose, is the theme today is about to do it. But we are actually doing it, and we want to share with you, myself and my colleague Michael Barrow. Michael is responsible for the delivery of these projects across a number of different countries. We'll talk about the general approach that we take, what we do for government, how we can address things like, what is the cost, and then we'll sort of specifically focus on the government of the Commonwealth of Dominica as a point in case, as an example of this. So let me start with an area where I think people will be familiar with. If we look at the challenges, that's an expression of really what is the world typically like today, not just for governments, but for large organizations from an ICT perspective. So quite often we will have different ministries from a legacy point of view that have different ICT programs that have come from an historical perspective. Ultimately, it's different digital agendas. The range of costs associated with that, typically is in the medium to high. It can be a little bit unpredictable. From that point of view, the question would be, do governments today get real value for money? Are they in control of their costs? Are the costs being spent in the most appropriate areas in terms of the needs and demands for government and for citizens? Data is so critical, all right, as we all realize, but information and data is stored in so many different locations, so many different formats. And the question I'd have is do governments today find it accessible? Are they able to leverage the value that resides in those information silos? There's been investments that have been made in various different platforms, be it for taxation systems, licensing systems, and so forth. But those are designed largely to operate internally and to support the interactions with citizens in a classic bricks and mortar type environment. People come to a kiosk, they come to a government office, and they interact with a government employee. And the systems that are designed today typically are in place from an internal operational perspective. When we look at, again, the myriad and range of different technologies and platforms and standards that they are based on, the integration of all of those technologies, even to take what you have today and move it to the internet, move it to a mobile platform, the ability to do that, typically there's a lot of challenges, not just in terms of data, but the integration of those capabilities and technologies together. I think, you know, what we've learned, not just at this CTU event, but I think we've been learning for the last number of years, is the ambition to achieve some of these sort of priorities and outcomes. You know, technology, in terms of what we've seen and demonstrated over the last few days, have been quite impactful. There are some excellent technologies here. But really it's about the outcome. What does that deliver? What does that achieve for government and for the citizens? So for us, it's really about saying, you know, what are those new digital services that you want to deliver? How do you incorporate and, excuse me, drive innovation within government? How do you do that at a lower cost? How do you do it in terms of better service? You can read there all of the various different elements in terms of the aspirations, which we'd all like to today go, we can do that. But, you know, it's an element, I suppose, a big question that very commonly I get asked is, I know where we are today, I know where we'd like to get to, but I'm not sure how I go on that journey. Where do I start? What are the next steps in terms of moving forward with that? So let me try and share some of those experiences. And you know, this begins with, I suppose, what's the impetus? What are the priorities in terms of what government would like to achieve as an outcome from this? At a macro level, there are things, you know, within government's manifestos, economically driven by government as well. I suppose there's, you know, a clearer direction and ambition to drive strong GDP growth. And in the region here with you know, currency and forex exchange challenges and so forth, that can be a significant issue. But there are means and mechanisms by, you know, reducing dependency on particular industry focus, diversification, but it really is about, you know, the development more of a stronger digital economy in a lot of cases. And what that can translate into is, whether it's, you know, investment programs, it's about how do you become, from a regional point of view or a global perspective, become the #1 choice in terms of ease of doing business, in terms of preferred location, agencies, finance companies, etc., to want to be established and committed long-term in terms of creation, employment, and economic wealth. All of that then as well, you know, is driven by the fact that we need stimulation for business confidence. So when we start hearing things like, you know, and I don't mean this in terms of being relevant to today, but when we talk about the historic situations where people start, you know, referring to the word recession on a regular basis, it erodes confidence, right? And it becomes a sort of a herd mentality where, you know, it is critically important, I think, for the business community that interact with government and see the leadership coming from government to actually understand that there's a strategy, there's an investment program, and it will deliver future confidence in terms of investment and development and growth. What's critically important is people, and people in terms of their talent, their skills and capability, you know, constantly improving and growing that, particularly in this world of you know, the digital economy. And then there's a range of services that, you know, whether it's smart city services that you would clearly have seen demonstrated here, and then things in terms of public safety, crime reduction, all very important critical factors that are very high on government's agendas. So you take all of that and you go, right, that's what we'd like to focus on, but how do we go about trying to do that? So it's about developing a very clear vision, I would suggest, and to start with, any of the programs we've been involved in, what has been absolutely critical, right, is that we, you know, government need a champion to lead this. it's very often that you know, there are common views or maybe slightly diverse views in terms of and support for these sort of agendas, but ultimately it is about somebody within government at a senior level supporting and driving forward and championing a vision like this. The vision evolves and develops into, like, what does that entail? So it could be, for example, here, creating an environment for innovation through that sort of digital economy, enabling all of these online e-government services, digitizing various different capabilities, making government go from your standard 8 to 4, 9 to 5, to go 24/7, open 365 days a year, making those capabilities and services easily available to citizens, and doing that in a way which is, you know, at a lower cost, and also in a way which the costs are predictable going forward over the long term as well. Freeing up resources who are focused on maybe the wrong areas from an ICT perspective or other operational perspectives, and putting that talent pool and valuable resource pool to working on what are the real priorities in terms of driving this vision and agenda. You know, and also to bear in mind here as well, through this, it is an opportunity for governments to consider how can they actually bolster their economic income as well. So in a number of cases, there are areas where we've identified that government deliver these sort of services in the traditional way, but citizens and businesses are actually prepared to pay to have an online, faster, easier, accessible service as well. So there's a range of things, and even, you know, some simple examples, as you'll sort of see in part of the later presentations here, is when it comes to surveillance and CCTV, being able to do things like taking a license plate recognition, identifying who the vehicle owner is, checking as to whether the tax and insurance has been paid on that, and why not then automate you know, an email or a notification to go to that person, direct them to your online portal service on a mobile or on an internet accessible portal, and allow the person to actually there and then do the payment, right? It's a collection of receipts basically back into government in a very cost-effective way. So you've got your vision, then really the consideration is, how do we really take the step forward? How do we actually really enact and pull this together? So this is when I sort of explained the position of what Digicel offers and what we do and how we partner and collaborate with governments, is that part of the team that we have that specializes in working with governments on these, you know, large transformational projects, is that we bring to the table expertise, not just from a technology point of view, but we talk about the outcomes and the achievements that government want to attain. We also look at the financial perspective in terms of how can government go about actually reducing their costs in relation to these sort of activities. So we get into a finer level of detail, working with all of the key stakeholders across government, and deliver to government at no charge, right, effectively a blueprint, right, a strategy document which, you know, lays out and maps out how government can move forward. Clearly that tends to evolve into a procurement, an open, competitive public procurement tender process. We've been through this numerous times, and in the last 2 years, any of those large-scale transformation projects, Digicel has successfully been chosen as the preferred partner of choice from an ICT perspective to deliver this and go into partnership with government. So you can see here there's a range of different considerations that come into play, and this is just a small example of it. So what is it that you need to deliver to citizens? What are their expectations? And citizens who travel internationally will see and will have reference points in terms of the experience of going through immigration, registering business information online. All of that effectively gives a reference point, and it drives a demand and an expectation then from citizens. Security, privacy, and regulatory requirements, hugely important. I mean, I would specifically call out here in the area or realm of, in terms of digital services. We're moving from a regulatory point of view as moving from a voice-regulated, fixed and mobile regulated industry to it's now digital services that span across a range of different horizontal industries. And therefore data privacy, consumer rights, all of those sort of things are going to be critically important. And for certain, governments need to pay attention and need to look at, is the regulatory framework which you operate in today fit for purpose in terms of dealing with the requirements as we progress forward, or do they need evolution and development? So we have a team, again, who can provide specific guidance and direction in that area. I'll move forward in terms of, not to labor in terms of time here as well, but just to finish off my part before we move specifically into the case study on the government of Dominica. So what we do is we take the approach here, which is that we want to work with governments on a long-term basis. We don't want to sell you technology. What we want to do is achieve the right outcomes. We want to deliver that to government as a service. So you'll see here on Dominica, but we've also done it in St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Vincent the Grenadines, Barbados, and a number of other places as well. We enter into an agreement in some of these cases up on as far as maybe 15-year term contracts, which is really a very serious, significant sort of commitment on both sides, for government and for us. We are vested, we are absolutely committed in terms of the successful outcomes of a partnership such as that. But where it begins with is, where we start with is in terms of what is the transformation plan? How do you go about actually taking all of the things we know today, pulling it together and developing a clear action plan in terms of how government can progress and move forward? Whether it's with us or whether it's with a range of different partners and so forth. I think the question in terms of costs, I thought was very interesting. The reference that I would be able to share with you is that we're very cognizant of the fact today that a lot of governments have been and maybe continue to do so in terms of spending a particular fixed budget, and to a certain degree then there is additional operational costs associated with that, which to a degree may not be that predictable. Right? I'd also suggest that in the majority of cases you can probably get significantly better service and specifically additional value at a lower cost to what is paid today. And in the projects we've been involved in, we have reference material that will show that we do this at 20% minimum lower than what is currently paid today. So as a reference in terms of answer to that earlier question, hopefully that gives some direction and guidance and help on that. We have obviously an experienced team. We have the knowledge and expertise, and we have the scars and the bruises and so forth to share. And all of that, I think, adds value in terms of that whole transformational engagement process. It can be a daunting undertaking. It can be the type of initiative and project maybe that government hasn't undertaken prior to this. And it requires a little sort of bit of inward looking to go, are we ready to do this? Are we capable? And if not, how do we transform ourselves? How do we get ourselves ready for moving forward? Finally, as I sort of wrap here and hand to Michael, there's a range of different technology and solutions. Our view is here we offer it as a managed service, and we deal with, again, the issue in terms of predictability of costs and so forth. In some cases, we have worked with the likes of independent financing agencies in terms of World Bank have been involved and so forth as well. So we have expertise in that area. And finally, the bottom line there is to say we do it at a lower cost. We help you transform your government ICT infrastructure and move you towards that FutureScape or 21st century government services. So let me just take you to hand to Michael, and we'll take you through the specifics then of the Government of Dominica project.
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. About a year ago, just over a year, we were challenged with an RFP to rebuild the infrastructure of the government of the Commonwealth of Dominica, to digitally transform the ICT and telecommunications ecosystem, and in addition to heed the call of the Prime Minister to make Dominica the most climate resilient country in the Caribbean. The issue of this RFP covered three major sectors in the government's agenda. One was a highly resilient network, one which was climate resilient, as so described by the Prime Minister. What was intended there is to have multiple paths of transport to all government sites, ranging from aerial fiber, underground fiber, using satellite technology, and a term that's coined called air fiber, which is basically microwave technology. There were approximately 200 plus sites categorized in various tiers. The tiers were based on the importance of the sites, the location of the sites, how important the site would be after a natural disaster. We had multiple teams, obviously, working on this RFP. And then the value added that was expected on this network was to be able to implement government e-services, things such as safe cities, smart schools, citizen services, security, and so on. Not something that we have not done before in different countries, as Paul pointed out, but never in one place. We had done components of it, for instance, St. Lucia, Grenada, Dominica, as Paul had said, but no one had ever asked for all of this. So in coming up with the solution for the RFP, we leverage on several different vendors, trusted vendors with us. We offered a fully managed network ranging from Wi-Fi, security, the connectivity, full managed service with NOC, several different NOCs, ranging from the subsea fiber to the CPE equipment, and so on. We also offered a mobile data management platform building on our mobile network, where we would manage the actual handsets that go to the customer. So we would be able to do mobility services, offer mobility services, offer security services for lost handsets, able to wipe handsets. There's a pilot project for advanced surveillance, a safe city type concept, where we would be able to do license plate recognition, facial recognition, and things like that. There's connected health solution, where all the health centers in the country would be connected to the backbone, and nurses, doctors would have access to subject matter experts via high definition connectivity back to wherever the subject matter was, and to be able to offer consultancy in any particular area. Key for the government as well, obviously, was the satellite solution. The satellite solution, I don't know if you know, but for a few days after Hurricane Maria, Dominica was dark with no access to the outside world. So for the Prime Minister, that was very key. Our satellite solution then put in place would offer resiliency if all of the aerial fiber, all of the underground fiber, all of the microwave technology goes down, that the country will still have connectivity to the outside world. In our development for the RFP, we did a short video featuring the CEO of Dominica, which I'd like to share with you now. It's not in here? Okay, sorry. Okay, so it seems to be some error in the presentation. But what Nakima, the CEO, basically said was, we look forward to working with the government of Dominica. It was very important to her, being a Dominican herself, that any solution that we provided to them was not just technology-based, but also value for the country. In our experience in rolling out projects like this, I thought it important to share what we found some of the key pillars are in getting a project like this done. Thought leadership, as Paul pointed out, is very key, not only from the customer's side, but from the provider's side as well. Being able to understand the vision of the government, access to funding, that may be the elephant in the room. Access to funding is very important. The unfortunate situation in Dominica brought funding to the country for rebuilding the country. Clear transformational mandate, what do you want to achieve in this project? what are the end goals. Very, very important is program management. And we're not just speaking about project management here, but program management. A project of this size is not business as usual. You should understand that. You need to understand there's a whole structure that needs to be put in place to execute something of this magnitude. Speaking from logistics, procurement, engineering, document management, there's a whole structure that we formed coming from doing other projects like this that we are able to take on something like this. Operational support model, very important for 15-year contracts. You need an operational support model to be able to service a managed services customer of this magnitude. And we're talking about business support systems, operational support systems. As I mentioned before, various tiers of NOCs, customer service agents, customer experience agents. There's a whole operational support structure. You have to be able to manage your refresh of the equipment for long projects like this, long contracts. Governance and control, the development of the SLAs for such a contract. It takes a lot of thought to go into these contracts, managing those SLAs, reporting on those SLAs, the supporting policies, demarcation of responsibilities between the government and the service provider. That's a very important issue. We had another video, but I think it was cut out. So I just wanted to say thanks for having us. If anyone wants to talk more about the experience, please feel free to see Paul or myself after the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael and Paul. Were you able to get the video to run? Okay.
I'm clearly the technical one here.
Okay.
Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
January of 2018, the government of Dominica issued a request for proposal for the restructuring and rebuilding of Dominica's telecommunication and ICT infrastructure after the devastating effect of Hurricane Maria. DHL Business emerged as the overwhelming winner of the bid, and as a result they were granted the right to enter into a multi-year, multi-million-dollar enterprise with Dominica to develop the infrastructure in keeping with the Prime Minister's vision of making Dominica the first climate resilient country in the world. DHL's bid was above and beyond the requirements of the bid. They showed the professionalism and expertise necessary to build Dominica's infrastructure. DHL's bid encompasses 4 layers of resilience, and these include overhead fiber, underground fiber, air fiber, and satellite technology.
I think DigiCell did a very great job in presenting something that is workable, doable, and we're looking forward as we start to roll out this program on the new standalone services agreement with DigiCell Dominica. That will be able to benefit significantly in looking at a very resilient ICT infrastructure and a network that really reflects the desires of the country, and also allow for a good private-public sector arrangement to be made. So we congratulate DigiCell, and we hope that it is something that we can do as a country, and hoping that the rest of the OECS and the wider CARICOM countries will be able to pattern upon.
Good. Very good. Thank you very much. We just have probably 1 minute for questions. Probably just one question before we move on to hand over to the SG. Oh.
Sorry, I had a question.
Oh.
Just a quick one. When do you all anticipate the completion of this amazing work?
So the program, the contract, let me start with, let me go back to the beginning, right? We started the engagement process with the government of Dominica in January, February of last year, right? The contract was signed on the 14th of January this year. So to be quite honest with you, in terms of getting through that entire process, which was approximately 12 months, in reference to any other large-scale contract that we're aware of, has been incredibly quick, and probably, indeed, could have been somewhat quicker due to some other intervening matters. But even with that, we're effectively, as of the middle of January, we immediately went into mobilization on that project. So there's a range of different phases to it. The most important part is for us to build the network infrastructure, which is the underlying, foundational layer for everything. That is already underway. We are, if you like, breaking ground in terms of the underground ducting, all of the cables that are being laid, the aerial fiber and so forth. Some of the services will come on sooner rather than later. So all of the mobility platform services with the security and managed services are actually being deployed as we speak. So they're in the hands of government employees right now. Things like the connected health services, the smart education services and so forth. Smart education is very close now to roll out within the matter of the coming weeks. But really to sort of say end to end, by the time government are completed with all of this and they have 2 on-island data centers and an off-island cloud backup service and everything, in entirety, we're probably looking at between 12 to 14 months in reality, to which there is a certain dependency on, our reliance on government in terms of their program and in our program as well. So that's why we would say it's an entire, and what I mean by that is that every single government building on the island will be fully connected with, up to 1 gigabit highly resilient network infrastructure at that stage. Other things like the aerial, satellite, and so forth, those services are currently being rolled out and implemented already.
Okay. That's it. Any more questions? We have probably another additional question we can field before we hand over to the SG.
Great.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael,
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Stockton. Very good. Excellent. Okay. At this point, I'd like to hand over to the SG to close us off.
Right. Good afternoon, and thank you. We're just closing off this portion of our activities, the Caribbean FutureScape experience. And I think over the course of the 2 days, you would have seen, you would have heard the theme of collaboration, 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 partnership, and so on. Caribbean FutureScape could not have happened without the partnership and sponsorship of many, many, many players. And I'm just going to I'm going to do it very, very quickly, highlight who our sponsors and partners were. And I want to start with Huawei, our diamond sponsor. Our diamond sponsor, Huawei, really worked with the CTU. They brought in their people. They did a lot to make Caribbean FutureScape the wonderful reality it was to be mobile. Our platinum sponsor, and Cable and Wireless, and Digicel. These 3 have just done a wonderful job in making Caribbean FutureScape the success that it has been. And of course, other sponsors included the Latin American and Caribbean LACNIC, Google, Facebook, Viasat, they sponsored the lunch, OneWeb, Microsoft, Lude, ISOC, ARIN, ICANN, Fortinet, and Cloud Caribbean. And then with our other partners, included Diagon, they did the whole face recognition, tracking of people within FutureScape. Yella provided a lot of the infrastructure and data intelligence. Sanch Electronics for Peak Pan Sticks. Crimson Logic, Government Services. iGov-TT, Government Pay. DIY, and they did a lot of, they had the digital library and the library of the future, what it would look like. Restoring the sense of ICANN was a whole educational system, homegrown in the Caribbean. Apex, the virtual courtroom, again homegrown in the Caribbean. TT Lab did the medical center. Again, these are young entrepreneurial PhD students and I think BSc students as well from the University of the West Indies. Sonova from Grenada, they provided the air quality monitoring in communication in Caribbean FutureScape. Incas did a lot of the data analytics for the entire experience. They also produced the data for the report, the state of the nation. Right. CARICAD, another intergovernmental organization, our partner, very much interested in the engagement of the diaspora. And we've been streaming these sessions, what happened in Caribbean FutureScape, and the response has been extremely encouraging from our especially from our young people in the diaspora. We also had Maxine Barnett Consultants. They also did a lot of work in engaging the diaspora from Canada, the United States, from the UK, and Europe. So she has been keeping them abreast of what has been happening in Caribbean FutureScape. Many of them applied for citizenship within Caribbean FutureScape, but they were not able to be here in person. Just in case I missed, Amazon Web Services, I did think I did say AWS, also enabled us to create this Caribbean FutureScape. And I think personally, and I think from the perspective of our staff, we felt that it gave a true representation of what a digital Caribbean could look like. So I'd like to thank every one of our sponsors and partners who came together and worked to build Caribbean FutureScape. Please just join me in congratulating and thanking the partners who made Caribbean FutureScape possible. And Caribbean FutureScape, it needs the collaboration of governments, it needs the collaborations of ministers, of course, as well with the private sector. And I'd like to thank the president of the CTU for being here, for staying the course with us, Honorable Melford Nicholas, and for his colleagues from Jamaica, Minister Williams, from Cayman Islands, Minister Hugh, from Trinidad and Tobago, Minister LeHunt, from Barbados, Minister McConey, from Guyana, Minister Hughes, and of course, Prime Minister Mitchell, who came from Grenada and gave a lot of words of encouragement, words of regret, and words of encouragement that we should strive for digital transformation and that we should do it. Yes? So I think we've come to the end of the Caribbean FutureScape experience. I thank you all for being here. The next session is the networking, our speed networking session. You should have received an email of how to sign up, and it's going to be done in this room here. So while we take a very brief 15-minute 15-minute coffee break, right, we'll just get the signs up and we'll prepare for our speed networking event. So I've thanked our sponsors, I thanked our partners, I thanked our ministers and senior government officials who came to participate in this whole experience. And I want to thank all of the rest of you, all of the distinguished guests, all of the people who came to get a taste of what the possibilities for a life in a digital Caribbean could be like. I thank you all for coming. And for those of you who are leaving us today, I wish you Godspeed. I wish Godspeed you on your way, that you return home safely. And more than that, that you could speak of the message of Caribbean FutureScape and to tell others a digital future for the Caribbean is within our reach. We can do it. And we need to work together as ministries in a government or as governments in the region. So tomorrow we have a number of activities. We have our Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, and it's going to be in the Ruby Room, and it's going to be starting at 8:30 a.m. And we also have at, I believe, 9 o'clock on the other side of over the bridge, or in the not in the Port of Spain, I've forgotten the name, sorry. Facebook will be having their how to build your business using social media and ICT. So that is also happening tomorrow. So for those of you who are leaving, God bless you. Thank you for coming. For those of you who are staying on, enjoy the rest of the week. And now we have our coffee break, followed by the Touchpoint networking, speed networking event. So I thank you all. Thank you for coming. It's been great. And we look forward to seeing you sometime soon, somewhere in a new location at the next edition of Caribbean FutureScape. I thank you.